Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery that you've seen me review a good number of things from now. So for this review we're going to a brewery that originated in the oldest town in Sweden, and I am of course talking about Sigtuna Bryghus. So we're going to have a look at the second in their Skogen releases that they did recently, the forest releases, and this one is the Skogen Dag. So a couple of videos ago you saw me review the Skogen Nat, which was an Imperial Porter. I want to say that one was 8%, but this one, the Skogen Dag, is a 6% Belgian style blonde ale, or Belgian pale ale they're calling it on the website as well. So it should be really nice. This is a style of beer that I really quite enjoy. I mean, Leffe is one of my kind of go-to beers. I really quite enjoy having one or two of those every so often, but I don't, I don't really drink beer outside of the beer videos that I do unless I'm going to a brewery or something like this. But it's a style of beer that I really do quite enjoy, and I'm very curious to see how Sigtuna interpret this one. This is my first Belgian style beer that I've had from these guys, if memory serves me correctly. But these guys are probably one of the more recognisable Swedish craft breweries. I think they are one of the ones that export a little bit more widely compared to some of the other ones, but a brewery that I've had some good experiences with in the past, and I'm curious to see how this beer in particular turns out, and I hope you guys enjoy my take on it. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Sigtuna Bryghus. I must have done about 5 or 6 reviews from these guys already. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Sigtuna Bryghus then, on to my brewery notes again. So Sigtuna Bryghus were founded back in 2005 by Peter Force, and he was joined very early on by David Meadows and Håkan Lundgren. So the brewery itself can be found in Arlandastad, which is very close to Stockholm Arlanda Airport. You can find Arlandastad roughly about halfway between Uppsala to the north and Stockholm to the south. And Sigtuna itself, if I remember correctly, is a little bit west of Arlandastad. And like I say, it is the oldest town in Sweden, and that is where the brewery takes its name from, of course. And one thing you will see about this brewery as well is that on their bottle caps now, they're calling themselves Sigtuna Craft Brewery. They were originally called Sigtuna Bryghus, and that is kind of still how I refer to them, if you like, but I'll put tags for both and things in the video. But these guys brewed their first batch of beer back in 2006, and in the early days they were producing only around 600 gallons of beer per week. Initially they wanted to brew mainly historical recipes, but of course more recently they've been brewing the more modern types of beer. They've got a big double New England IPA from what I remember, so I need to see about reviewing that one for you at some point too. I can't remember if I did, but their Black Soil IPA is also a personal favourite of mine, and you know, for the first few years these guys were very happy kind of hobby brewing, but their beers proved to be really popular, and they decided to invest fully, upscale their brewery, and they hired more staff 10 years ago in 2009. In 2013 though, they surpassed the 1 million litres of beer brewed mark, and they now have 12 employees with a 3,000 litre per brew capacity, which means they can brew over 1 million litres of beer per year. The brewing team is currently 4 men strong, and they're apparently expanding further to meet demand for further exports, because they have started exporting already, but they are constantly trying to grow that. Their brewery itself is also home to the well-known St. Erik's Brewery, which is where Jessica Heidrich used to be the brewmaster. They've been a guest brewery there since around 2010, and the relationship that St. Erik's Brewery has with Galatea, one of the biggest food companies in Sweden, that's helped out Sigtuna quite significantly with their brewing capacity. I think Galatea have helped them quite a lot with the investment in the equipment and things like this too. But Mohawk Brewing, Mr. Mohawk of course, one of the gypsy brewers in the Stockholm area, he does brew a good number of his beers at Sigtuna Bryghus as well, and that's a brewery I do need to revisit quite soon, because I haven't had anything from them in quite a wee while. But you know, this is, as I say, probably one of the better known Swedish craft breweries these days. They have been around, and if I remember correctly, these guys are, I think they do quite a few organic beers as well. So yeah, definitely a Swedish brewery that you want to check out, and one that you will come across, you know, kind of easier compared to others, more easily compared to others if you're watching this video from abroad. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about Sigtuna Bryghus, or Sigtuna Craft Brewery as they're now known for the moment. If you want to learn a little bit more, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and that'll keep you up to date with all the latest goings on. But yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. So as you can see, the artwork in this one is quite similar to the Skogen Nat, except there's a little bit more animals in it and it's a little bit kind of lighter. So the artist for this one is Ragnar Persson. And the idea behind these two beers, or the artwork on both of these beers I should say, is that he wanted to interpret the forest, or interpret the beers in terms of the forest, and make a forest picture based on how he thought the beers came across. So of course the Skogen Nat was very dark and you had all the branches and stuff like this, whereas the Skogen Dag's a little bit more lively and kind of happy looking, if you like. But that said, you know, the Skogen Nat was a beautiful beer actually. I would probably say that's the best one that I've had from Sigtuna Bryghus so far. But this one, as I say, I've never had them do, I've never tried a Belgian beer from them. I don't know if they've done one before, right enough, but hopefully it's a nice beer, and like I say, I was impressed with the other one. So there is the Sigtuna Bryghus bottle cap on this one. You can see that's also on the front label here, and you can see that lovely artwork from Ragnar Persson there. I do have to compliment him on that. It looks like it's a pencil drawing. I'm not sure if it's pencil or charcoal or whatever it is, but certainly pretty good. And by no means I am by no means an art buff, but you know, I do appreciate good artwork on metal albums and all of this kind of thing. There you can see the Sigtuna glasswork on the bottle there. I'm not sure how well that's showing up on the camera, and of course it tells you a little bit about the beer on the back. So like I said, this one is a 6% Belgian blonde. The little profile of the beer on the website tells you that this one, it contains a Hallertau Mittelfrüh, so German mid-spring hops basically, and it's got Pilsner and wheat malt in it, so should be kind of interesting. But let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting, and I'm really curious to see how this particular beer shows up. So yeah, you can see a nice little bit of smoke on the opening, and we'll get it out and into the glass. And I'll tell you something, when you open this up, it does actually smell pretty sweet. See? Yeah, no, you can definitely smell a little bit of that Belgian yeast, but it was almost kind of candied. When I was sitting over here, it was a sort of candy quality that I was getting out of this one. There's only a tiny little bit left in there. So yeah, so as you can see, that head's going to fade away quite quickly. You can see there's roughly about a quarter finger of a quite bumpy white head on this one actually, quite big bubbles on this, and they're just going to fade away very, very quickly. But you know, it does look very, very nice. Pretty much what you would expect from a Belgian blonde. So a lovely bright golden yellow colour, one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and quite a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, overall it looks pretty much what you would expect from a Belgian style blonde ale. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see that this one is kind of hazy, and I do remember most of the Belgian beers being hazy, to be honest with you, and that's mainly because of the yeasty qualities that they have. So yeah, it looks pretty good. So let's have a look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Oh, that does smell pretty nice actually. It's interesting that, because the yeasty qualities are the things that jump out of this beer at you straight away. So you can notice you've got that lovely kind of wheaty base to it, but then on top of that you start to get these doughy kind of qualities to it. It's almost a little bit spicy as well. It's not quite coriander, but it's not too far off. There is almost this little touch of a kind of vegetal thing to this one as well. It's almost like some of these are, there is just a little tiny touch of an aroma that's kind of similar to what you get from those Kveik yeasts from Norway, like a sort of farmhousey thing, that herbal kind of vegetal sort of quality. If you breathe in the aroma of this beer quite deeply, you will actually come across that straight away. So yeah, nice little bit of grassiness on this one too. But the malt, this one's dominated by the malty and the yeasty qualities. There's a little bit of biscuit in there, some woody kind of qualities as well. As I say, a little bit of biscuity sweetness. It does have a little bit of that bubblegummy candied kind of quality, which is interesting. And I picked that up when the beer, when I opened up the beer, it was almost like some of those slightly sweeter notes you'll get from a German Hefeweizen or something like that. So it's kind of interesting that it does have one or two sort of wit, almost like it has a little bit of a Belgian wit quality as well because of that wheat malt that's in there. But it comes across pretty nicely, this one, I have to say, and with that little bit of that herbally vegetal thing, that's kind of interesting too. In terms of the aroma then, or the hoppy side of the aroma I should say, brain's not working in this video, but in terms of the hoppy side of the aroma then, this one's pretty straight up. I mean, you get a little bit of that sweet earthiness that you would expect of a German noble hop, some floral quality in there, and quite a bit of grassiness. For me, the green side of the hops really leans towards that grassy side of things. In terms of fruitiness, I would say that there is, I'd say that there's a little bit of a kind of, it's kind of like appley and peary. It's got a little bit of that kind of orchardy ester, but at the same time, it's almost got a little bit of like a dried sultana quality to it. It's definitely got a little bit of a dry, that kind of sultana-y quality, and maybe even a little touch of a very slight kind of figgy note or something, which is interesting. So for me, that's quite unusual. So maybe dates. I don't know. So it's interesting, and those fruity notes are kind of mixing in with that sort of herbal vegetally thing in there as well. So really a lot of nice Belgian doughy yeasty qualities to this beer. A little tiny bit of that slightly farmhousey funky note that you'd expect of like a Kveik IPA, but that's quite minimal. You have to take the aroma in quite deeply to come across that actually, so that's interesting. But typical German noble hop notes on this one, like I said, Hallertau Mittelfruit, but and some some lovely juicy fruity qualities as well. So let's have a taste of this one then and just see how we got on. This one is the Skogen Dag, the Forest Days, if you like, from Sigtuna Bryghus in Arlandastad near Sigtuna, and just near Stockholm as well here in Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, Skål, Belgian ale at 6% ABV. Cheers. Yeah, that's interesting. That it's a very, for a Belgian blonde, to me the first impression I have of this is that this is a really wet mouthfeel in the beer. That's nice. I do like this. I wouldn't hesitate to drink that again. It's a good example of a sort of Belgian beer. The question for me is, I have had a couple of Belgian pales and I have had the blondes, and the pale ales, from what I remember, are always just a little bit more kind of fruity and things. I think this one is leaning a little bit more in towards the blonde variety because it leans a little bit more towards the malt. I mean, you do get a bit of a hoppy bitterness and freshness out of this one, but this beer really does lean into the kind of smooth side of things. Yeah, that's good. I mean, this gets a thumbs up from me. Is it quite the same quality as the Skogen Nat though? I'm not quite sure. They're very different styles of beer, but I have to admit, I think in terms, if we're just thinking about them as standalone beers and ignore the styles and things, I think the Skogen Nat edges this one a little bit, but that's a minor point. In terms of being a Belgian blonde, I do actually quite like this. That sort of, when I first tasted this beer too, that sort of herbal, vegetal kind of thing that I was talking about, it came out in the flavour a little bit, but when you drink more of it and your mouth adjusts fully to what's going on in this beer, it's it's less obvious. It's definitely less obvious in there. Yeah, so for me, let's try and break this flavour down now. So for me, you can feel that nice sort of wheaty base just blanket in the middle of your tongue, but at the same time it does retain a little bit of that crispness, and that's the Pilsner malt at work in there. A little bit later in the flavour, you're going to get the doughy, yeasty qualities from the Belgian yeast in this one. It's got that lovely, it's got that lovely kind of slightly thicker, doughy quality to it, and it's quite a sweet doughy quality, this one. I mean, quite often some of them have Some of them can have just a little tiny touch of a spicy note in there, but that's a bit more prominent in the wit beers than it is in the blondes. The blondes usually are a little bit kind of smoother. In the very centre of your palate you get a little bit of a kind of biscuity quality in there, which is nice, and it's not quite strong enough to be caramel, but it really reminds me of these sort of McVitie's digestive biscuits that we always used to have back home in Scotland. The biscuity qualities in this one really do remind me of that. But I like, the thing that's unusual about this one for me is just the sort of thickness, that you get this really, it's almost like a blob in the middle of your tongue. You just get this blob of nice kind of sweet, yeasty, doughy quality actually, and I really like that about this beer. It's a bit different from what you'd normally get. But it's nice and it's drinkable. Like I say, the other thing that makes this one stand out to me is just the wetness in the mouthfeel of this one. This one's got a nice wet mouthfeel rather than being a little bit crisper, which is good. So yeah, in terms of the hoppy side of the beer then, from the German noble hops, it's pretty much what you'd expect. Back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of that nice kind of light earthiness, and they're almost quite sweet, and that builds a good bridge between the malt base and the hops. As you come further forward along the sides of the tongue, you've got a nice little bit of a sort of floral aromaticity there. Then round the very front curve of the palate, it's just a little bit lighter and more grassy, and then behind the front curve of the tongue, that's where you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters are starting to come out of the beer. So for me with this one, if you go to the back of that oily bubble, that's where you get those kind of sultana, dried fruity kind of qualities. As you come a little bit further forward, you start to get the more appley and kind of peary esters coming out of this one. So you also get that, you do get a little bit of that nice appley peary quality in there, and that kind of lingers on into the aftertaste. You get the sultanas, and they're almost a little bit darker and stronger. They come out at the back of that oily bubble, and then you get the appley peary qualities that come out at the front of the palate there too. So I mean, the further you go into the aftertaste, it's the fruitiness that kind of sits there, a bit of that sweet doughy quality, and also the nice floral aromaticity too. But I mean, overall, in terms of the Belgian blondes, this is a pretty solid example. It's a little bit different in some ways, but I like how it goes together, and it's mainly the mouthfeel that makes it different, and just the way that some of the doughy character comes out for me that makes it different. The doughiness in this one is a little bit sweeter rather than being more kind of bready and smooth as you would get in like Leffe or something like that, but the biscuity qualities that this one has is really nice too. So in terms of that mouthfeel then, I would describe this beer as mid-bodied. Carbonation's very smooth. The mouthfeel is really quite oily, and again, this is one of the things where this beer differentiates from the Belgian blondes a little bit in my mind, is that usually like Leffe and things, it does have a little bit of crispness to it because of those yeasty qualities that you have, and I think usually there is a little bit of secondary fermentation in there, but this one is quite an oily mouthfeel. It's quite wet at the same time. In terms of hoppy bitterness, I would say that this beer has maybe 20-ish IBUs, something like that. That's maybe even too generous. It's maybe actually about 15, 10, 15. So yeah, 10 or 15 IBUs in this one, I would think. Nice sort of smoothness and sweetness in the centre of your palate, both from the yeasty qualities and from the malty side of the beer. And you've got a lovely juicy fruity quality to this one as well. It's quite an oily fruity note that comes out in this one too. But I mean, overall, like I said, this is a nice beer. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. I think it would be interesting to try this one on tap actually and see how it comes across there. Maybe they get a little bit more carbonation on tap or something like that, but quite an oily Belgian blonde this one. But in terms of flavour, you can't fault it at all. For me, it's really the mouthfeel that distinguishes this one a little bit, and just the sweetness of the doughy notes. But it's a nice effort at this beer style. And the last one I think I had before this actually came from Eskilstuna, Ulkulter, and they did a really nice one as well. So I hope, you know, more breweries have a go at this. It's quite nice to see that in Sweden that breweries are having a go at the German styles and the Belgian styles, because for a long time it was just all about IPAs, but more and more breweries are having a go at these different styles from Belgium and Germany. So long may that continue, and thumbs up to Sigtuna Bryghus for having a go at this beer. But let's leave it at that for this one. This one is the Skogen Dag, a 6% Belgian style blonde ale from Sigtuna Bryghus in Arlandastad, quite close to Sigtuna, Stockholm and Uppsala, I guess you could say, in Sweden. So thank you again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Sigtuna Bryghus. Do let me know your thoughts on this Skogen series that they did, and hopefully, you know, it'd be cool if they did a few more of these. I don't know, maybe they can do a Forest Seasons one or something like that at some point. That would be an interesting next step for them. But thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, and I'll catch you guys later. The Skogen Dag from Sigtuna Bryghus in Arlandastad here in Sweden. Slange, skål, cheers.